So good morning, good evening, and a good afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you so much for joining the Critical Issues Forum speaker series. And my name is Masako Toki. I'm a senior project manager at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies at the Middlebury Institute in Montreal. And I'm a project manager of the Critical Issues Forum. So thank you so much for joining today's exciting event. And I would now, before we start this lecture, I would like to introduce the Critical Issues Forum and our school just briefly. So let me share my screen. So just a little bit, bear with me. Okay. Uh, Okay, so I guess you are looking at my screen. So today we are so delighted to welcome Dr. Salma Malik, the world's leading scholar in the field of nuclear policy, as a keynote speaker, and her speech is titled "Strengthening Peace and Security Initiatives Through Cross-Cultural Youth Engagement." And we will introduce her to you shortly. But first, I would like to briefly introduce our school and our center and this project, the Critical Issues Forum, which is the promoting disarmament and non-proliferation education to high school students. So first, let me briefly talk about our school, the Middlebury Institute of International Studies at Montreal. So we are here in Montreal, and one of the most beautiful places in the world. And our school provides international and professional education in area of critical importance to a rapidly changing world. Our school's mission states, the Middlebury Institute of International Studies educates professionals to advance understanding, promote peace, and drive change in pursuit of a more just world. So please visit our school's website if you are interested in learning more about our school. And I work at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, CNS, and a research center of a Middlebury Institute. And our center was established in 1989 by Dr. William Potter. The mission of CNS is to combat the spread of weapons of mass destruction by training the next generation of non-proliferation specialists and disseminating timely information and analysis. And we have a variety of research and education and training programs. The Critical Issues Forum project is one of CNS flagship non-proliferation and disarmament education projects to promote disarmament and non-proliferation education to high school students around the world. Currently, we are engaging high schoolers from around the United States and Japan. And we are so happy to announce that this academic year, we are going to welcome high school students and teachers from India and Pakistan to the CIF project. Engaging youth from these countries in nuclear disarmament education is very important, and we are so excited. Critical Issues Forum's project goals include to help students appreciate different national and cultural perspectives on complex international security issues and contribute to international peace and security, disarmament and non-proliferation, and other social justice endeavors while developing their critical thinking and intercultural communication skills. So normally, the CIF project holds an in-person student conference in Montreal, California, where our school is located. In the past, we have also held a conference in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan and in Vienna, Austria. Student representatives from each CIF high school present their semester-long student studies at the spring conference. We have also invited amazing guest speakers to the student conference. So each year, we choose a timely topic related to nuclear disarmament. The CIF project aims to empower students through non-proliferation and disarmament education to become informed citizens who can contribute to issues of peace and security and social justice. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres states more education and training opportunities should be established in order to empower young people to be a force for change and disarmament. So if you are high school student or teachers and interested in learning more about the Critical Issues Forum or are interested in joining the program, please reach out to me. You can find the information about the CIF on our website. And please follow us on the social media. So finally, CIF activities cannot be possible without the generous support from our donors and friends. I'd like to express our sincere appreciation to the funders and supporters of the CIF project, the Tom and Sarah Pattison Fund, the Saga Foundation, the Catherine Wasserman Davis Conflict Transformation Collaborative Fund, Mr. Greg Walport, and other individual donors. Thank you so much for your continuing support. So now I would like to ask CNS Graduate Research Assistant, Mr. Ali Jaffrey, to introduce today's guest speaker, Dr. Salma Malik. Ali is also the Deputy Director of the Center for Security Strategy and Policy Research in Lahore, Pakistan. So Ali, microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Masako. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Salma Malik, with whom I have interacted with almost 7 years in various capacities, and she has been one of the leading guides for me in the field, and I've always benefited from her work, expertise, and timely advice to me and other young people in the field. Um, so she has a very impressive profile, which spans over spans a career which talks about a career of almost 3 decades. So I'll try, in the interest of time, to do justice with her illustrious profile. Dr. Salma Malik is an associate professor at the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies, Qaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. She is also looking after the Directorate of External Linkages for the said university. She specializes in the areas of conflict and security studies as well as South Asian affairs. Dr. Malik is an alumna of the Uppsala University, Sweden, and the Asia Pacific Center for Strategic Studies, Hawaii, and former visiting research fellow at the Sandia National Laboratories, New Mexico, United States. Besides being a member of IISS London, she is part of various fora such as the Regional Center for Strategic Studies, Consortium of South Asian Think Tanks, Social Sciences Research Council, WISCOMP, and WND USA. Prior to joining Qaid-e-Azam University, she worked as a research officer at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, from 96 until 99. Her publications include an edited volume entitled Pakistan's Security Problems and Challenges in the Next Decade, uh, RCSS's policy studies titled Small Arms and the Security Debate in South Asia. She also co-authored a USIP study on mapping conflict trends in Pakistan, and she regularly writes journal articles, policy memos, book chapters, and columns in prestigious national and international publishing outlets. Thank you so much, Dr. Salma, for joining us. We are deeply appreciative of the fact that you have taken out the time uh, early morning, and that too in a potentially volatile day in the country. So thank you so much once again. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ellie. It's such a pleasure seeing you and getting this opportunity to be hosted by you. Thank you so much, Madame Masako Toki and Alicia Ishimura, for organizing and providing with this opportunity. Um, and thank you everyone for actually taking time out. For some of you, it's a bit late in the night, late in the evening. It's the start of the weekend, and that's a lot of dedication. And for some, it's early in the morning. Well, technically, 7 o'clock is not very early in the morning. It's the start of a good day. But today being a weekend, I guess people are very protective of their sleep. But I'm so happy that all of you are here. And once again, my deepest gratitude to the organizers, to the forum for having me as part of this prestigious setup. Um, I would start with this small quotation. Educating young people about peace is planting seeds for a world free from violence and injustice. Um, Sounds heavy, sounds very cliched, but what we have found is that when we talk about peace, it has usually been centered around a specific number of people looking very serious about life, very serious about the worldly affairs, and deciding about something which is very important, but also something that should be all inclusive. And slowly and gradually, what we managed to get through these decades was the inclusion of women as active stakeholders and not just tick marks through the 1325 UN Security Council resolution, which talked about women, peace, and security. And initially, in that resolution, the girl child was part of that larger debate, and the youth was also taken as part of the indirect consequence of what conflict, security, insecurity, peace, and absence of peace would do to young people. And it was only in the late 20s, rather 2015, that there was an independent take on how the youth should be included through their participation, through their partnership, through making them active agents in the prevention of conflict, in the conversation on conflict, protection of conflict, disintegration, reintegration, disengagement, and that was done by the principal UN Security Council Resolution 2015, in 2015, which was 2250. And this was followed in the later years by two more resolutions. In 2018, Resolution 2419, and then 2535. And all of them talk about the proactive role youth can play when it comes to peace and security, which is very needed in this particular age of anger and intolerance. There is an ample and there is a critical need for strengthening peace and security around the world, which cannot be overemphasized. And as I just said, that at the global level, the UN system is seeking as much as possible to hammer this point home and to make this an overall and inclusive agenda. At the regional level, as well as inter and intrastate levels, there are efforts being provided and underfoot to make this youth peace and security agenda clearly accentuated. Yet the fact that there is a lot of realization that youth is an active stakeholder in peace, there is a need to do a lot more. We still talk about it. We have at least started to acknowledge that youth are an active agent in peace and security. But what is required is to actually include the voices in this picture. And we have also seen that there is a significant amount of research effort which is undergoing to understand the issues regarding behavioral changes amongst generations. I belong to the classic generation, Gen X, or the baby boomers. But then, if I look at Ali, He represents the millennials, and many of you are either part millennials, part Gen Z, and now many of us are the Gen Alpha. And all of these generations have a very different take on how the society around them have evolved. Perhaps our generation and the millennials were the quieter ones, or that's what we feel. At times, we also feel that we lived through some very fascinating and interesting times. There was a lot happening during the time frame we were growing up. But I guess for the generation Gen Z as well as Gen Alpha, you have your own takeaways when it comes to looking at peace and security, interaction, empathy, trying to understand what is happening around you. Just yesterday, one of my students asked that we people are very high on the EQ. How do you rate us on the IQ? And I said, I think I would rate you very high on the IQ, but on the EQ factor, you people seem to be a little disconnected because you're all very gadget savvy. Many of us, which is not something that people of my generation would find happening. So there is this different way of how we are thinking. But the good part is that your generation is very, very proactive when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to uh, uh, talking about difficult issues, talking about controversial issues. And you people take a very strong moralistic stand on issues on which we would be uncomfortable, and keep deliberating amongst ourselves and not really raising on the higher platform. So I think if you are interested with this notion of peace and security, you are better leaders. You are far well equipped than we were at your age when it came to critical security issues. And just look at Greta Thunberg, who's now 21 years old, and she was a young girl when she started to talk about climate change and started to raise awareness about climate change, and how this has totally changed the entire conversation. Where, at one hand, as part of our conversation, engagement with the youth is a very growing popular concept, and it's also a very important aspect. Another aspect that has to be considered when we are doing this conversation today is the multicultural effect and impact, and we have to put both these aspects together. Various cultures, some within countries, but more importantly across regions, require understanding of cultural sensitivities, nuances, which can actually then go about doing greater good for the humankind. Um, Before I start on talking about the various imperatives of youth as the key stakeholders and all, let me just cite a personal anecdote. Uh, I think more than a decade back, I was in Dhaka, Bangladesh, to attend a conference. And the date of my exit from Dhaka was 16th of December. For those of you who are not aware of this, 16th of December happens to be a date when Pakistan um, and Pakistan broke into two parts as a result of a civil war, plus an interstate war in which India was also involved, and Bangladesh emerged as an independent country. And while I was waiting for my ride to the airport, and believe me, the trip went very well, and we had a wonderful time, and we were feasted to some great seafood. I just pulled the curtains apart, and the hotel was on an important city intersection. And through wherever I could see on the roads, there were these big banners and pictures which depicted Dhaka's efforts to gain independence in 1971. And there were these very disturbing pictures. And I just had this moment of I would say, kind of a flight of fantasy, where I just thought that here I am, a young woman sitting in Dhaka on this particular day. What if an angry mob of people enter and something goes wrong, which wouldn't have happened at all? And the thought came, and I dismissed it, and it was gone, and that was the end of it. But then I reached the airport, and while I was checking in, I saw this very modern, uh, westernized Bengali family, a young Bengali family with two small kids, standing at a distance and looking at me and having a conversation. So I was kind of, why are they looking at me and conversing? And the gentleman walked up to me and he said, "Are you going to Pakistan?" And I said, "Yes." So he said, "Okay, my wife has to go to the US, but we have to transit from Pakistan. And we are very uncomfortable." And I was like, okay, so that's not just one person sitting in a hotel room having this flight of fantasy. Here is another person having this active moment of reflection and, like, discomfort. And I said, "Why are you uncomfortable?" He said, "We are Bengalis and she's going to Pakistan even for a few hours. What will happen to her?" I said, "Nothing will happen to her. Just don't worry." Anyway, so I kind of stayed with that lady till such time that she boarded her next flight. I had assured her husband that was a time when we didn't have WhatsApp and all of these things too frequently. So only I could text him, and I kept on talking to her young children. And once she boarded the flight, I called the husband. I assured him everything has gone well, and she went away. We never ever spoke about it ever again. But these were two young people, um, having a very different image about the other country. And this is so unfortunate because we don't really know each other. And this is what is very important, that you have to know each other. My first interaction in a youth assembly was in year 1998 when I had fresh graduated. And as part of the Regional Center for Strategic Studies, which used to be a regional forum, many of the South Asian youth from across the region met in Shanghai. And our host at that time and the organizers, they were kind of worried as to, there's so many Indians, Pakistanis, Bengalis, Nepali, how are they going to communicate? And I think it was only the first 30 minutes of introduction that we didn't know each other, and after that we were inseparable to such an extent that when this assembly broke, that youth camp was over, even the men were crying, the young men were crying, and there would be moments when we would all be sitting and doing tasks, group task and assignment, and any one of us would break into a popular song, and if it was a Hindi Urdu song, then we would be singing along. And then suddenly, those who were from Sri Lanka or south of India, they would start singing in the Tamil version of that particular song. And many of our Chinese friends would be looking at us. We thought you guys were enemies. What happened to that particular image? Uh, so the youth has this resilience. The youth does not have that type of emotional payload that many of us have managed to add to our shoulders over the years. The importance of involving young people from diverse cultural background, and believe me, many of those people whom I met through that particular forum are still very near and dear to me. And whenever we have to have a regional assembly and we need any speakers, they're our first go-to people, and all of them are doing great. So if we have these constituencies in each other's country, and courtesy the visa restrictions, the difficulty in travel. South Asia is a very difficult region because within the region, the travel restrictions are so much. The airlines, they don't travel to one another's country. They go out of the region to return to the region. So these are all the difficulties. But interestingly, when the COVID happened, that provided us with this breaking of the barrier as well. All we had to do was connect via Zoom and have a webinar or have a seminar and discuss critical issues. And we were happy to come across and manage to put across several studies, especially related to COVID, looking at SDGs and how different countries are performing in responding to the COVID, to the pandemics, to climate change. And we have done all that and more. And technology and the outreach has actually helped us overcome the travel and the physical barriers. So these are the pluses that go with this. Now, how can we break down this particular concept of strengthening peace and security initiatives through intercultural youth engagement? The topic that Ali and Ms. Toki gave to me. First of all, youth is a very strong key stakeholder in peace building. They are often at the forefront of conflict, but they also possess the energy, creativity, adaptability to lead peace and security initiatives. As I said, that the youth of today does not have the type of emotional package and the type of barriers that many of us have been able to layer on ourselves over the years and over the decades. And interestingly, in one of the studies that I did on partition cinema, we were looking at this factor that the first generation that actually suffered the 1947 partition, they went through emotions of longing, trauma of losing their homes, their loved ones, displacement, migration. They were upset, but they were not so bitter, majority of them. The bitterness came much later. And through these ultra-nationalism and nationalization projects, what we have seen is that the youth of today is being taught at school, through the curricula, strange notions about the other. So when you start doing the others, that becomes disturbing. And but interestingly, because of the outreach of social media, many of the youth of today don't really fully believe the agenda of what is being taught in textbooks and curriculum. But yet it is a very a challenging situation, because those who are exposed to cross-cultural exchanges, those who have been able to kind of live up to and find a space for themselves through and find an opening, it becomes easy to understand that the other may not be so demonic, the other may not be so difficult to talk to. And but then there is a big number of youth which unfortunately remains wedded to the populist agenda that the nation building is being done through textbooks and the curricula, and the image of other is very strong with them. But yet, whenever they get an opportunity, and this is something that we have seen through youth engagements, their preconceived notions about the evilness and demonic nature of the other neighbor or not so neighbor tends to undergo a major change, and that change is usually for the better. So, if we involve the youth at an earlier stage, then they become an active contributor to sustainable peace rather than passive observers. And again, for the Gen Z and Gen Alpha, this is a very, very strong factor, because they have their own very strong traits of taking strong positions about factors which are very dear to them, factors which are very important to global peace, stability, and security, whether they be climate change, health security, betterment of the world. We have seen how youth have campaigned across campuses worldwide for the Palestinian issue. And this is something that really speaks of the strong ethics and values that the youth themselves bring with them. And this is commendable. The second factor is the intercultural engagement for conflict resolution. We see that by engaging youth from different cultures also helps in promoting mutual understanding. It helps promoting tolerance, and it also provides the opportunity for dialogue and development of discourse across cultural divides. People would walk up to us and say that if you're in Pakistan, oh, then you wear a burqa, and you tell them, no, no, we don't wear burqa in Pakistan. And then they realize that, and then you have to tell them that we are dressed the way we are. Uh, Someone once asked a colleague of mine that she was driving a car, and they said, "Oh, you drive in Pakistan?" And I said, "Yes, Pakistan does not live in stone ages." So these are those misconceptions and stereotypes people inculcate about themselves, and only through interaction and more openness, more dialogue, can we actually break these barriers and misconceptions and stereotypes that we have with one another. Thirdly, having more engagement, intercultural youth engagement, helps build social cohesion. Through collaborative projects, one can unite youth across cultural lines, and this can promote empathy, solidarity, inclusivity, which is extremely important. And I think empathy is one factor which cuts across all divides. And Unfortunately, when Pakistan had this incident of killing of school children, the amount of love, empathy, and sentiments that poured into Pakistan was so heartening that one could feel that we were not alone in facing this trauma. And it really helped people in the healing process. And likewise, when in India, this young lady who was coming home and was gang raped by some boys, the anger and the feeling that everyone felt for this young girl, whether she was in Delhi or any other place, was something that everyone felt had happened right next to them, and we all stood together. So I think there is a need to stand together when it comes to global peace and global prosperity, and understand and empathize where the other is coming from. And that is the first fundamental building block, and then the rest of the thing can actually fall in place. Social cohesion also helps reduce the likelihood of tensions escalating into conflict and it helps foster trust by building shared goals. At times, when we talk about the Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, we talk about the atrocities that youth and the women have faced, and you feel that perhaps your contemporaries from India may not be so open to that, and suddenly you find that they are far more vocal about voicing what is happening in Kashmir than you have a prepared text about, and you actually feel that okay, there is still a lot of chance where the civil society, the younger civil society, those who are upcoming, are talking about some very disturbing issues, and they carry a very, very clear idea about how to settle the problem, gives you a lot of comfort and makes you feel that tomorrow may be actually a better day. But unfortunately, this is something that we are going to talk about in the challenge. How much space is the youth voice given when it comes to deciding key critical issues? And that is something which is very, very important. Then, utilizing modern tools for engagement. As I said, social media platforms, digital tools, virtual exchanges help bridge geographic as well as cultural gaps. As I said, during the COVID, the social media was so proactive in doing so much of work. The webinars, having classroom interactions. We tried to experiment by holding. I had my students join some of my colleagues' classes in Delhi and in Chennai, and we held sessions together. And students would then try and understand how both sides are looking at the same issue through their perspective. And to understand the other perspective is also important. Perhaps at the beginning, we may not agree with the other's perspective is, but at least we need to understand from where they're coming. And that is also very important. And once the initial ice is broken, then you can develop those type of building blocks and empathy, and understand the shared goals and shared vision that can take one a long way into looking at these issues and developing some kind of mechanism to resolve the problems. And we may not always need to focus on the most disturbing and the most controversial problems. We can start with small, and we have usually seen that starting with small helps a lot. And many a times, there have also been these interactions where a complex scenario would be presented in a youth forum, in a summer camp, and the young people would actually come up with a very quick solution, doing away with the political nuances. And our mentors would then tell us that the same thing which was then presented to the senior lot, the bureaucrats, the civil military leadership, took hours and days to come to some amicable resolution or a solution to the problem. So why did you people help do it so early? And we're like, we never really thought that there are any political nuances to look at. So perhaps you need to give peace a chance by providing the youth a talking platform and providing the youth with this situation where they can speak about issues and provide a better understanding of the problem rather than having a very loaded, politically and ideologically infested solution to the problem. Furthermore, educational programs which focus on conflict resolution, peace building strategies, intercultural competencies help equip the young people to tackle security challenges very proactively. Um, Unfortunately, it has a flip side to it as well. If we have school curricula where young people are exposed at a very young, much younger age, at a school level, having tableaus of breaking mosques, killing people, lynching people, chanting ideologically loaded slogans. In my study on Afghan war during the 1980s, when the war was very proactive and the guns and weapons were being provided to the Afghans and a culture of quote unquote jihad was being promoted. The textbooks which were being taught at the refugee schools, and much of that textbook was coming from a US university which was working on that project, which was a requirement of that time, had guns and bullets as one, two, three, or the alphabets were being taught accordingly. So A was armament, and B was banduk or bullet. Banduk is gun in Urdu, or a bullet, and stuff worked like this. So the youth were trained, the mindset was trained at a very young time frame as to how they should look at a war culture or a jihad culture. And such exposure can actually take this conversation of peace and security in a totally different direction. But at the same time, if we can do this worst type of educational training, we can also use it in a different fashion to make youth engage for conflict resolution, peace building. And this is also a part of the YPS, which is by the United Nations Security Council, the 3 resolutions on this. Then the youth leadership at the global as well as local context are very proactive at the grassroots level as well as at the international level, through which they create a generation of informed and engaged individuals who are capable of advocating for systemic changes. As I mentioned about Greta Thunberg, I come across Ali is one of my very, very active example here, who I think is a very smart young guy who knows so much, who's so knowledgeable. And if we have young people like him around, I think this conversation can go in a very, very different direction where they understand what these problems are. And they're not just being rhetorical, they're being very factual, they're being very logical, yet they are not loaded with any type of ideological baggage, and they try and find a solution to the global problems. I come across several young people on campuses who are proactively working on climate change. They're proactively working on eradicating illiteracy. Teach for Pakistan project, several other projects, teach one, each one teach one type. So there are these local NGOs which are targeting um, uh, critical issues through the youth, and the youth, through their resilience, are doing a great job. My students at my campus, after their study hours are over, collect young children from the neighborhood, and they teach them for free. And they make it sure that any kid who is out of school also gets a chance to study, and they make arrangements for their school bags and kits through their own pocket monies. And this is something that I feel is so good. And believe me, we were not so smart at their age. What and the type of advocacy and the type of stuff that they're doing is mind-boggling. Then youth-led organizations also bring a very fresh perspective to entrenched issues, and often they come across with innovative solutions. At the policy level and the international cooperation and support, governments and international bodies should actually establish supportive policies that encourage youth participation in peace processes. And they should also be have funding available for intercultural exchange programs. And this is something which is unfortunately not being looked upon, and this is very, very important in case we want to invest in peace. And partnerships between countries can actually further youth engagement by providing resources and platforms for collaboration. There are several youth fora. Some of them I just I'm mentioning, such as Seeds of Peace, which is very proactive in the Middle East. It is also looking at the South Asian conflict regions, but very, very proactive at the Middle Eastern level. There is the Isaac, which some of our campuses have adopted, and they have done very well. Ali's University just recently, her a mentor and boss, Dr. Rabia Akhtar, did a Gaming for Peace project as well, which was very fascinating. There are Global Youth Connect. There's your forum through which I'm speaking. There's the European Youth Parliament. There are model United Nations, which make students understand how the United Nations and the nuances work. The Dialogue Cafe is there. Youth Interfaith Leaders Fellowship is there, and the list is endless. But what basically is required technically at our end is that the type of strategies that can actually strengthen peace and security through these initiatives and more are education and awareness programs that need to be there. And as I mentioned about the RCSS, which used to have the Regional Center for Security Studies, which used to have active summer and winter workshops. And those summer and winter workshops would look at traditional and non-traditional security aspects respectively. And those who were interested in non-traditional issues, they would apply for the winter workshop, and vice versa. At the same time, such fora would also provide funding opportunities for studies, single author studies, collaborator studies, and they would encourage people from two different countries to work on a particular project. And we have done a lot of those studies, and that also helped bridge that perception deficit, the trust deficit, the conversational deficit that we had with our counterparts from the other countries, and they have done good. Unfortunately, the problem that many of such organizations face is that the donations and the donor money that comes to them are project specific, or at times you have a lot of money because something has happened. The RCSS flourished immediately after 1998. The foundations, the Ford Foundation, Asia Foundation, W. Alton Jones, there was Plowshare Foundation. They were all interested in engaging the youth for non-proliferation and discourse. And a lot of money was provided to such organizations for that regard. And once the non-proliferation issue did not remain very, very in, or I would say it wasn't very topical, so the money dried up. And that is what these, unfortunately, foundations remain dependent on. And they cannot then sustain in a larger fashion. So I think there's also a need to have a very steady endowment and fund that can take these organizations through years and make them flourish. Then in India, we also have a Women in Security, Conflict, Management and Peace, the WISCOM dialogue, which initially we thought was all female centric, but then we found out that even there were men who had equal interest in looking at peace through this new prism. So WISCOM has done a great job. And several others who have been doing this. Cultural exchange programs, going to different campuses. The Isaac has done a lot of stuff. Community services projects where students have done green campuses, even within the country. In fact, many a times when we talk about intercultural exchange, the instinctive reaction is that we are talking about India, Pakistan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh. But we don't realize is that even within the country, there is a disconnect. You would have people in Pakistan, we have four dominant ethnic groups. I would actually say 5 to 6 dominant ethnic groups, but four mega ethnic groups, the Punjabis, the Pakhtuns, Balochis, and Sindhis. And many a times we don't interact with each other. We don't even know what the other side is thinking about. And it is very important to meet each other. We usually joke about this thing that we country where someone has come from any of the other provinces to present a paper. So this is actually a tragic notion. There is very action within the country. There is very little until we do that, and these things would not. It would become difficult to have. My university, it is a federal concern, which means that we have reserved spaces for coming from all over Pakistan, which actually makes this campus a microcosm of what my country is all about. And it is very fascinating to see many a times, more than ever before, children actually kind of conforming to their ID code, yet interacting very proactively with one another, having very strong bonding and across the divide, as we may call it. And that helps create a lot of perception building and a lot of empathy between these aspects. Then there's a need for dialogue and fora, which I have mentioned in terms of the education and awareness program as well. But there is a need to have more youth-specific dialogues and fora. We have come across organizations which are now being run by the youth, led by the youth, where you have youth recruiting the young people and talking about specific things. The digital engagement provides, as I said, and this cannot be overemphasized, a virtual intercultural discussion and campaigning space. And it helps amplify the youth voices and connects them globally. There's also a need for a mentorship program. There's a need where we can pair the youth from different cultures with mentors who can guide them in peace building efforts. Just yesterday, I received a mail from the WISCOM, to which I'm going to send 10 of my students for a virtual program on peace building. So I think it is really needed. If I were to send these 10 people to India, it would take them forever to get the necessary permissions, the visas, the travel documents correct. And after 2014, the situation for Pakistanis to travel to India for any such engagements have become very minimal. And this is so unfortunate because the less one interacts, the less you get to know the other side, and the gap is widening as each year passes. So there is a need where any type of engagement opportunity is needed. For South Asia, those who are interested in South Asia, as I said before, many a times we have to move out of South Asia to actually talk about South Asia as a region. And this is a tragedy. And a lot of that has to do with the physical restrictions that have been put by the governmental structures, by the lack of connectivity between these countries, by the bureaucracy or the red tapeism that does not allow several things to happen. And thanks to digital platforms, many of those restrictions have been overridden, and that really helps. Art and cultural expression provides you with yet another opportunity. Sports initiatives are also very important when it comes to engaging with one another and having a collaborative sports activity, which can help build camaraderie and break down cultural barriers. And we saw this happening at the Olympics as well, where one of Pakistani gold medalists had a lot of support coming from his Indian counterpart, who was also his competitor. But here you had this spirit of gelling together, and that really helped. And we have seen these things happening, and this is so wonderful and heartening, provides you with a great experience. Youth-led advocacy, when we empower youth to take lead in peace initiatives, providing training in advocacy and leadership skills, it helps them effectively and very proactively promote peace in their communities. And that is a great notion. And as I said, having joint studies through research and knowledge sharing can help bridge these deficits a lot more. And then again, last but not least, partnering with organizations which can help bridge this deficit is also something very important. At the end, I would, I think, I hope I have not overstepped my time limit. I would just end with another anecdotal notion. When I started, I said that if we educate the young people about peace, by planting seeds for a world free from violence and injustice, I would say when we plant trees, we plant seeds of peace and hope, and we also secure the future of our children. And I wish you all the very best. And I look forward to each one of you being the torchbearer of peace, stability, and connectivity in the future world. Very best of wishes. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank, thank you so much, Dr. Salma.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was fascinating. You've put so much on the table. It's so unfortunate that people could not join us live, but you have put so much on the table that each of your point can have a separate discussion.
Thank you.
I think you raised a number of important points, uh, and I can't overstate the import of empathy. And also, you mentioned that we need to move away from ideologically infested narratives. I think that's a very important point. And gladly you mentioned seeds of peace, and you would be delighted to know that we have just signed a collaborative agreement with the very organization, and
Lovely.
and it is through that we will be hosting Pakistani and Indian students, high school students, for the project here in Monterey. And I would dovetail that with what you just said, that we need to go out of South Asia, in the sense that we need to go out of South Asia and talk to other nationalities and other peoples around the world. I'm using peoples in a very specific context. So I would now um, open the floor for any questions that might have arisen. We have 4 to 5 students here, and if anybody of you have a question, please raise your hands and I will give you the mic.
I see some high school students here. So no pressure, but please don't be shy. Especially we want to give opportunity for high school students.
If you don't have a question, you can give a comment, or you can just um, ask something
Share
different.
your experience as well.
Yeah.
We would, I would be very happy if anyone can share his, her experience, um, or anything that didn't go well, because the initial ice breaking is always very difficult. And I think Ali can vouch for that, because the University of Lahore's several of their initiatives have really gone through these phases, and they're doing very well. And while Ali, you were mentioning the Seeds of Peace, um, the Uppsala University, and I think various universities. I think at one time the Monterey Institute is very active when it comes to this, and your center is very active when it comes to this, especially the strategic dialogue. At one time, the Actors program at University of Urbana-Champaign was another such initiative. So, what is good to know is that from time to time, various campuses across the world, my campus, Uppsala University, from where I studied, they have carried out programs which have provided youth with ample opportunities and openings, and many of them are now world leaders. So, yeah.
We
So please, I
have
would love to welcome you all.
we have a question from Kainat Amin. Could please unmute yourself and introduce and ask your question. Can you please unmute yourself? Okay, yes. Yeah, please ask your question. Introduce yourself and ask your question. No, we can't. Now we can. You're not audible.
Okay, Kainat, why don't you, if possible, why don't you write down
Yes,
the
exactly.
question, if possible?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe while we are waiting, yeah, any other question?
Yeah, she'll write in the chat box. In the in the mean in the
Yeah, but
meantime, yes.
yeah, but while we are waiting for Kainat writing questions, I also really like to appreciate everything what Dr. Salma mentioned. I was especially moved by the emphasis on empathy, importance of empathy, because both Alisa and myself had roots in Japan, and I had a lot of opportunities to listen to atomic bombing survivors, and it's really, really all the atomic bombing survivors emphasize the importance of empathy. The understanding other people's suffering is the starting point of the world peace. So I always engrave that important words whenever I do this nuclear disarmament activities. So thank you so much. And again, I'm also very happy that you mentioned the Seeds of Peace. As Ali said, we started collaborating. It's just a new start, but it's really, really amazing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
They're,
So
they're
I
doing an
think
excellent work, and it's been a while, especially for the Middle East. It's amazing.
mm,
Um, I'm so happy that you people are collaborating together.
I think one of the rationales behind this collaboration is that while the Seeds of Peace is doing some great work, it is not focusing on anything related to disarmament or non-proliferation or anything remotely related to um, hard security issues. So we thought that we could partner in a manner which allows both organizations' expertise to feed into each other's. So we will benefit from their network of high school students, and they will benefit from our um, wide array of expertise in the broader field. So I have received a question. There was a problem with the yeah. Okay. So we finally have a question from kind of okay now. She's writing. So she's saying, how can we engage people like her who is not from the non-proliferation field, who is not from the security field, but is doing a PhD in chemical engineering? Now we know that science lies at the heart of nuclear weapons and obviously non-proliferation. But in these debates, we don't find young people, young chemists, young physicists. So how can we engage with people like her?
Thank you so much, Kainat. That's a very important and a fascinating question. Um, Interestingly, in several of our interactions, we have had MBBS doctors, medical doctors, being part of peace networks, and you would find many of them being there. I don't think that the peace constituency is specific to social sciences alone. It's your interest, it's your heart. If you want to be part of that, you're part of that process. And um, the pugwash process, the young pugwash participants are hardcore engineers or scientists like you people. And they are very proactively talking about advocating peace. And I'm not saying that just because pugwash is to do with non-proliferation and with the science conversation on science, so you should restrict yourself to that process. But I'm just giving you an example that it's not that you have to be a core social scientist to be part of peace conversation. You believe in peace, so you're part of that. In fact, it's better that you come from a different background, you have a different way of thinking uh, other than a social scientist. And that brings a lot of diversity and a different perspective to the peace conversation. And as I also said, that when you engage with more people who are looking at peace and security, the YPS agenda, you would actually come across young people who are medical doctors, a very proactive constituency, who are looking into these segments, and also scientists. So, no restrictions at all about the qualification part. This is the beauty of peace and security debate.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was a very succinct and powerful answer. And there is no limit. There's nobody bars you from participating in initiatives like this. There is also Isodako, which is run by a physicist.
Yes, yes,
I was also
absolutely.
part of it. Dr. Abha is also
Absolutely.
one of the lecturers. Um, and I would encourage young people on this call to file in their applications for Ishodaku. It's a great program, perhaps one of the best in the nuclear field, which combines social scientists, and they have a very good conversation. So, Victoria, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Hello, I'm Victoria. I live at a boarding school in Connecticut, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on here and talking about it. Um, it was a big commitment for you to prepare this, and I really enjoyed learning a lot about your points. And specifically, I had a question. You talked about the importance of having like these forums filled with empathy and having these spaces to talk. And as someone who facilitates that, what can you do as a facilitator to set the tone to make it an open space where people feel comfortable to talk?
Fascinating question.
Yeah. Um, Sorry, Victoria, can you just come again? That are you asking about the role of the facilitator?
Yes.
Okay. You see, we cannot talk about peace unless we believe in it. And many of the people who are part of these processes, Ali mentioned about Isodarko, I talked about several of the fora that I have attended. Many of the people who have come to this fora are very passionate about the work that they're doing. They believe, because unless and until they believe in change, they are wedded to the concept of peace, empathy, connectivity, inclusivity. It cannot happen. One dark side at times you do see is that this has also, or such factors have a tendency of becoming an industry in their own right. But despite that, you would come across so many people who are, I mean, mind-bogglingly invested in this. They're passionate about it. They're virtually living and breathing this sentiment. And at times, you find that they get disappointed as well through the process, but they don't give up. And this is something very important. Many of my contemporaries, we started in the late 1990s, didn't know each other, came across, had a lot of misperceptions about each other. Today, we are part of the trainers, we are part of the mentors. But those who mentored us were a league apart, and they're still in the game and they're doing a great job. And many a times we don't look at them through the lens of nationality. The sooner you start looking at any of those mentors, any of those trainers, through the lens that, oh, he or she is coming from that country and that is why this person is saying what he is, that entirely changes the discourse. But these are the difficulties that happen. But then you also have a lot of such trainers who who do not carry the national ID code with them. And for the participants as well, you don't find a transformation happening in the entire 100% participants, but as many who are part of this conversation, all you need to do is pick up now your telephone and give them a WhatsApp call, connect with them virtually, and this is what is required for starters.
Thank you so much
Yes, thank
for
you.
rounding it off so well. Saku, do you have any final thoughts before giving a vote of thanks to Dr. Malik.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Dr. Salma Malik. And again, I really wanted to reiterate, I cannot agree more to each one of the words you mentioned. And I'm also working in this field, doing my best to promote disarmament and the non-proliferation education to younger generations. And this is not easy task, but I also feel more and more young people are also showing some interest, especially the more human aspects of this nuclear disarmament related issues. So that's really encouraging to me. And although there are so many challenges in this world, perhaps the only part I can feel so hopeful is younger generations and young people who are, having a strong determination to work for the better future. And I really hope that this project, Critical Issues Forum, is going to contribute to the better future and a world without nuclear weapons. And you also mentioned the importance of collaboration. And I just really wanted to thank you again for your really amazing speech and heartfelt encouragement. And I would really like to collaborate this continue to our collaboration for this important work. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madame, for having me as part of your forum. And this is so prestigious, and you all have put together an excellent team and doing great job. Thank you. And I'm so honored and humbled that you provided me this opportunity to come and speak from your forum with the young people. And I wish you all the very best, and I'm sure you'll do a great job. You already are doing a great job, and you're going to further build better bridges. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for your participation, and also Ali and Alisa and each one of you who participated. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Thank you, Miss, and all
Thank
the best.
you.
Bye.